Hello everybody, and happy October! My name is Mike, and this is The Bored Cyborg. Today I'll be taking a look at my top 10 favorite horror films of all time. I want to start off by saying the same thing that everybody says who does a list like this. Farmered! These are films that I can watch over and over again. They always feel fresh, and every time that I watch them, I feel like I'm watching them for the first time. And that's how I know that they're my favorites of all time. So, what do you say? Let's dance!
Number 10.
The Abominable, the Abominable, Dr. Phibes. Vincent Price is my lord, and Phibes is sacramental celluloid. It's an insanely creative and inventive horror comedy that was highly influential. In fact, I don't think we would have the Saw series without the Abominable Dr. Phibes, and I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. Price plays a concert organist and a deranged doctor of music and theology, Dr. Anton Phibes. He feels that the medical doctors who failed to save his wife from death following an accident are to be held responsible and murked out in the most elaborate of ways that he can conjure. Each kill is inspired by one of the 10 plagues of Egypt. You've got death by the way of locusts, boils, frogs, each with their own creative spin that would make the best and most cunning of Bond villains head back to the drawing board. Needless to say, the film is perfect, and The Abominable Dr. Phibes is my number 10.
Number 9.
The Brood, which I have here on Criterion, is my number 9. David Cronenberg is one of my favorite directors of all time. He's a huge influence on my personal work, and his imagery is one of a kind. The Brood is my favorite of his films, with The Fly being a close second. It's a psychological body horror film from '79, and it really is the epitome of the term Cronenbergian. It's about an experimental doctor named Hal Raglan, who may or may not be crazy, played by Oliver Reed, who was undoubtedly crazy. He's developed a new psychotherapy technique he calls psychoplasmics.
You know she's still undergoing intensive therapy.
Which forces his patients to release their suppressed inner demons and emotions as physical manifestations, like warts or boils or something, we'll say, a little bit more subtle. The story follows Frank, played by Art Hindle, on a quest to uncover what's really going on with his institutionalized wife, and to see if everything that the doctor claims is legit. Oliver Reed is perfect in this role, and it's one of his more reserved and creepy characters. And Samantha Eggar is beyond words. There's a look of sheer madness in her eyes that not many actors or actresses can achieve. It's too convincing, really, and her resolution will leave you speechless and clutching for air.
Do you? Do you?
Number 8.
Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I love Don Siegel's 1956 classic, but Kaufman's '78 remake is just a better sci-fi horror suspense thriller. It focuses on a different set of fears at the time, and it expands and improves on almost every aspect of the 1956 classic. We jump right into the action as the general populace start to become shells of their former selves. The alien creatures replace the human hosts while they sleep, replicating their physical attributes perfectly. But they haven't quite got our emotions down yet. Shit, I don't fucking blame them. They probably started to mess with them like, we got this, emotions, psh, emotions splomotions. We'll just assimilate those bad boys the same way and nobody will be able to tell. Whoa. Okay, nah, you know what? We're good. We didn't sign up for this. What we get is some of the most intense and paranoid horror filmmaking ever. The special effects are groundbreaking, and the gelatinous pods are grotesque and just goopy. The cast is stacked with Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Veronica Cartwright, Leonard Nimoy, Jeff Goldblum, Art Hindle, and even Kevin McCarthy from the original makes a really cool cameo. The endings of 70s horror films were some of the most grim and downbeat. This film, along with The Brood, are prime examples of this. You can't sleep, you can't blink, you can't escape, you are f***ed. And these plant-based alien life forms are the f***ers.
Number 7.
Let's go back a bit further, this time to 1941, to cover my favorite of all the Universal monster movies, and one of my favorite monster movies of all time, The Wolfman. What really entrances me about The Wolfman is Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance as Lawrence Talbot. You could really feel his emotions in this one. There's so much heart in this portrayal of a man stricken with the curse of becoming a bipedal wolf every full moon. And it's all because he attempted to save his romantic interest's friend from a wild animal attack. Like any good man would do, and that makes his curse that much more affecting. He wasn't a shitty person who deserved this fate. He was a good man who was just trying to do the right thing. And now he's f***ed for life. You know, if nothing else, this film has taught me to always hesitate when somebody is in need. I completely empathize with Talbot, and this film brings me to tears almost every time I watch it. I just want to hug him and tell him that everything's gonna be alright. Being a wolfman really isn't that bad. Besides the occasional insatiable thirst for human flesh and blood, agonizingly transforming into a hideous, brutish ball of fur, and being completely outcasted by anyone who's ever loved you because they're afraid that you may one day take a chunk out of their neck. Other than that, it's not too bad.
Number 6.
Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which is somewhere on here. Where do you even start with a horror film this epic? It's one of the few horror films that I can even call epic. Based on Stephen King's novel and completely detested by the author, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is a masterclass in meticulous, nerve-obliterating horror filmmaking. Each frame is perfection and tells a story. The performances are few but flawless, and the setting is suffocating and desolate. It all culminates into a maddening exercise of tension and familial degradation. Kubrick was all about details and was known to be a mad perfectionist, and I think The Shining is the most perfect of all his films.
Eyes Wide Shut is his most perfect work.
Bullshit, it's The Shining.
F you, it's Dr. Strangelove.
Both great films, but they ain't The Shining.
I'll show you The Shining, bitch.
Here's Johnny.
The Beyond from 1981. Directed by an underrated maestro of horror filmmaking, Lucio Fulci, his The Beyond puts all other zombie films back to rest. To be honest, I don't even like calling this a zombie film because it feels like it belongs in a genre by itself. These hellish creatures feel more like restless vessels of flesh with the innate yearning for the consumption of souls. With a narrative that will bemuse and entrance, performances that will bemuse and entrance, and a dreadful atmosphere that's thicker than Sicilian pizza, this film is an endless rabbit hole of madness and subtle chaos. It's as if Fulci took a vacation to the fiery depths of hell, came back to the surface, and transcribed his experiences onto film.
Number 4.
Phantasm. Boy! Which is in this rather large and cumbersome box set, and has that. Don Coscarelli is such an inspiration to me. In 1979, at the tender age of 24, he wrote, directed, produced, edited, and shot one of the greatest horror films ever made. The atmosphere and tone were inspired by Italian horror films from the 70s. It's dreamlike and really captures the sensations of dreaming. It's idiosyncratic and puzzling, just like the movies that our mind throws on the reels when we enter the enigmatic state of sleep. The story is flying mammal feces. It follows Mike, Jody, and Reggie, a cooler-than-the-Caribbean crew of friends who stumble upon an interplanetary plot that's being carried out by the mysterious, towering tall man.
The funeral is about to begin.
He steals corpses from a mausoleum and transports them via a giant tuning fork portal back to his home planet, where they are reanimated and truncated into little alien dwarf slaves wearing Obi-Wan Kenobi cloaks that are then sent back through the tuning fork portal to silence Mike and company. Yes, that is the plot, and you know what's even more unbelievable? It fucking works. Boy!
Number 3.
Top 3. These are the best of the best, folks. The cream of the crop. Films that I would have intercourse with if I could. My number 3 favorite horror film of all time is Suspiria, directed by the Italian horror film legend Dario Argento. Look at that. Whoo! Yeah. Suspiria is a barbed wire wrapped gift to the senses, an audio-visual orgasm, and the lighting and sets to this day are still some of the best ever filmed. The best Italian horror always feels so detached from Western horror films, and ethereal and surreal are the only two words I have in my lexicon that could describe how these films feel. Suspiria is no exception and is the prime example. It follows a young girl named Susie who enrolls in a ballet school that is in the middle of the woods. The introduction of her character and the outside world is one of my favorites in the history of horror. The way Argento injects life into the scene as Susie walks out of the station and onto the populated yet somehow desolate streets and into a seemingly normal taxi cab is a masterclass in horror filmmaking. It's a scene that most directors would end up shooting by the numbers and in a boring way. But here, Argento wastes no time in setting his stage. Goblin score propels this opening into dreadful wonder as the audience quickly realizes through zero dialogue that Susie just may be damned. Goblin is on their A-game here as they lace this beautiful hunk of celluloid with the most memorable, eerie, creative, inventive, and effective horror movie music in history. In Italian, Suspiria is said to mean something along the lines of taking a deep breath, and I think that perfectly sums up this film. You can't leave this school, you're trapped, you're damned, you're f***ed. It's Suspiria.
Number 2.
Mi número dos es Alien. Fucking Alien, man. This film is drenched in acidic atmosphere. Alien may be Ridley Scott's greatest achievement. It's a timeless piece of sci-fi horror that completely changed the game forever. The talent involved in this production is unprecedented. Ridley Scott, Walter Hill, Dan O'Bannon, Carlo Rambaldi, H.R. Giger, Jerry Goldsmith, Sigourney Weaver, and the rest of the cast. Throw them all into a cosmic black hole, and on the other side it spits out one of the finest films of the 20th century, horror or not. You know the story. It's been ripped off 1,001 times by Roger Corman alone, thankfully. A spaceship full of blue-collared men and women's sleep is interrupted as they pick up a distress signal from a nearby planet. Us humans are exploratory creatures by nature, so the crew has to check it out, since this may be humanity's first contact with an alien life form. And it sure was their first contact with an alien life form, let me tell you. And the crew is picked off one by this alien being, as this rickety haunted house with rocket boosters floats through the blackness of space. Creatures burst out of chests, gelatinous mini heads extend and push through larger ones, blood eats through metal, and an alien baby matures quicker than a banana in a microwave. It's fucking Alien, baby.
Honorable mentions.
I want to take this time to throw out a good handful or two, or 97, of my honorable mentions. And to keep it short, I'm confining myself to 3-word reviews. These are in no specific order. Here we go. Reanimator. Absurd Lovecraftian lunacy. The Body Snatcher. Karloff and Lugosi. House. What the fuck? Dead and Buried. Criminally underrated classic. Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead. Grotesquely gory goodness. The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, aka Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, aka a few other titles that I don't remember. Forgotten zombie classic. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Hilariously ghoulish tomfoolery. Son of Frankenstein. Best Frankenstein film. Prince of Darkness. Impending mind fuckery. The Motherfucking Manitou. Pana Witchy Salitu. The Changeling. Textbook ghost tale. Possession. Tenaciously titillating tentacles. The Fly. Brundlefly's disgusting decay. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1932. The best adaptation. Hammer's The Mummy. Murderous mummified mayhem. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Undead Mall of America. Okay, I cheated. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is somewhere in here. Favorite of the franchise. Damn it! The Exorcist. Crucifix Vagina Stabbing. The Fan, aka Der Fan, aka Trance. Consume your obsession. The Tingler. Spine-tingling splendor. Ooh. Them! Giant fucking
Ants!
Candyman. Candyman, 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 Candy... Scream. Watched Too Young. Jacob's Ladder. Post-traumatic nightmare. The Stuff. Fuck is it? The People Under the Stairs. Mommy and Daddy. Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Spooky as shit. Brain Damage. Don't Do Drugs. Goddamn, goddamn. On to number 1.
Number 1.
This is it. This is it. The big one. My favorite horror film of all time, and quite possibly my favorite film of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing, which I love so much I own 2 different Blu-ray copies. A remake of another classic, The Thing from Another World from 1951, John Carpenter's The Thing is Lovecraftian perfection and is my favorite horror film of all time. It's about a group of men who maybe aren't as fearless as they may think. They're holed up at a research outpost in the bitter and desolate Antarctica when they discover an alien species that spends its time assimilating other life forms, replicating them exactly. Such a simple concept that hits right at home and is executed perfectly by John Carpenter and his crew. The special effects by Rob Bottin may just be the finest example of practical effects in cinema. They haven't aged a day and are still as convincing as ever. And with a score that epitomizes tension, Ennio Morricone paints a dreadful soundscape that invades your psyche and refuses to let up. The Thing is balls-to-the-wall badassery. It's a film about what makes us humans so special. Flamethrowers, explosives, and whiskey. It's good to be alive. The Thing is my favorite horror film of all time, and it will continue tightening audiences' sphincters until the world goes... I just want to thank you all for checking out my top 10 favorite horror films of all time. I'm curious to know what your guys' favorite horror films of all times are, so feel free to list your top 10 in the comments below. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to hit the subscribe button so you could be notified whenever I do release a new video. Also hit that little notification bell. Feel free to share this with anybody that you think may enjoy it on Facebook, Twitter, any other social media websites that you may use. Happy October, everyone. Happy Halloween, and I will see you all next time. Bored Cyborg, out. Whee!